Hey, thank you for participating in reading. It's about the middle part of what's called the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. So this is about halfway through the greatest sermon that's ever been preached, and that was by Jesus Christ. Now, when you received a bulletin today, you probably, in comparison to the other bulletins, this is like an Encyclopedia Britannica. So if it's too much, I apologize, but there are some things here that I thought maybe might be helpful to you, and I need to go over them again and again about dealing with the fear, the paralyzing fear of what-ifs, or that deal, the different fears that we face. And so you find the insert, and Changi, and let's see, Sojin, you took care of all this, and we appreciate that very much. Thank you. But it's on the insert, it says 7 reasons not to worry, and then 5 more reasons not to worry. I guess you could have just put them all together and had 12, a dozen. But nonetheless, you can look at that and later today, or as you pray this week. And but we want to follow the outline. You have an outline under the scripture, Matthew 6, stand tall against the fear of the paralyzing what-ifs. And then there's the outline, 7 points, and we'll try to follow that as we share together. Now, there was a pastor who was recently ordained. This some time ago, and that pastor was recently ordained, and he was invited to preach at like a family camp setting. And there were going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there. And so he was very nervous about that, and I think that would be very normal to be nervous about doing that. Well, when he thought about it, he said, he got shook about it, and he found out a bishop was on the campgrounds. He went over to his cabin. He told him about his plight. He said, I'm supposed to preach even in a few minutes, and I don't even know what I'm going to preach about. Well, the bishop advised the young pastor. He said, just trust the Lord, young man. Trust the Lord. Well, the bishop had to go do something else, and there in his cabin was a Bible, and so the young fellow picked up the bishop's Bible, and he thought, well, I might find a verse or verses or a chapter that are inspirational to me to be able to share with the people. But he found some notes in the Bible that were the bishop's notes. And so he went to preach, and he took the Bible with him and the notes, the outline for a sermon, and he went and preached that outline of that sermon. It was so good. And the people were astounded, and they thought, boy, this is really something. And he preached it, and then the people were astonished. But the bishop, after the service, he caught up with him and he thundered and he said, young man, he said, you preached the sermon I was going to preach tonight. You preached it this morning, and I want to preach it tonight. Now, what am I going to do? And the young man said to him, Bishop, just trust the Lord. Trust the Lord. That's what he'd told him to do. Well, when we think about it, the challenge today is to stand tall. We're to stand tall. I remember I used to measure myself how tall I was every day. Every day, because I wanted to get to 6 feet tall. And when I went to high school, I was only 1/2 of 1 inch over 5 foot. Whenever they took basketball pictures, my buddy and I, John and I, they put the big guys in the middle, the tall guys, and they taper them off. And here it goes. And down over here, I can remember it vividly. It goes like this on this side. That's fine. It looks really nice. On this side, it went like this. Because John and I were really short. And so I prayed, someday be 6 foot tall. Now, I won't measure myself now, because God answered that prayer, and I got to 6 feet tall. When you get older, they say you shrink. I won't chance it. I won't even begin to measure myself. You go in these convenience stores, and they have 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot right on the door, don't they? Boy, I look at that, and I try to go way up and look down at 6 foot. It doesn't work that way. But I won't measure even on those. Now, we're to stand tall against the fear of the paralyzing what-ifs. I think we've all done those. Well, when we think about this, we're to trust the Lord, especially when we're talking about worrying. You say, Pastor, you do not know the worries I have. No, not unless you tell me. But we've all had our worries, and we all have worries. And how do we deal with them? I have them. Zig Ziglar, you may have heard of him. He's a motivational speaker. And he gave these kind of percentages that add up to 100%. And he said that studies have shown, and he wrote about something to smile about. Now, if we take this to heart, we can smile about this because he said, first of all, that 40% of our worries will never happen. Everything you worry about, 40% out of 100 will never happen. They're not going to happen. We don't want to accept that probably, but it's true. Now, 30% of our worries have already happened. 40% are never going to happen. 30 of them have already happened. That just leaves 30 more percent, doesn't it? You're adding up? 12% of our worries are over unfounded health concerns. We all have health concerns. Well, if you're 18 or 20 or 22, you think you're going to live forever. I know how that feeling goes, and so do others of us here, but 12% are over unfounded health concerns. 10% of our worries involve daily fretting. 10% of them that accomplishes nothing positively, but it only works negatively. Now, only 8% of our worries are truly justified. And we hope they'll lead to constructive action and not just wallow and develop into depression. Now, everybody, I believe, is depressed at some time or another. The key is don't stay there. Don't stay in depression. And then it goes to deep depression. And then we got big problems. Well, all of this worrying needs to stop. And what does it lead to? It leads to poor mental health. It leads to poor physical health. Worrying can do that. Well, we're challenged to stand tall and to face the fears that somehow just, if we brought our soul, S-O-U-L, out, and those fears just grip the soul. They just kind of grip them. And we think of those fears like terrorism and war. They're real things. I don't deny that. Terrorism is real. War is real. Financial insecurity. Or if you're in a group and somehow you're rejected or you've been betrayed by somebody, you fear to be rejected and betrayed. And if you've been rejected or betrayed, you know what I'm talking about. Skeletons in the closet. In other words, things that have happened in the past, they're going to get brought out and you get exposed. Well, disease and death and there's a fear of failure and disgrace. What if I fail? You know, we've been following, 80-some days now, the oil spill. Every time the newscast comes on in the evening, they'll say, this is the 85th day, or this is the 83rd day. And then you wonder about people who work for BP. How strong they are spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally. What that will do to them. Now, there's the fear of the paralyzing what-ifs. What if my car breaks down? Jane and I traveling from Indianapolis today on Interstate 74, there seemed to be more traffic because the most traffic was July the 4th and then the race day. You know, December, yeah, right. May 30th in Indianapolis, a 500-mile race. More traffic. But today seemed maybe a little more, and probably because there was a detour of another interstate. They're working on an exit, and they detoured them off onto this. Now, what happens, and we forgot our GPS? How did we ever live? How did we ever get over here without that GPS? It's still in the cabinet in the kitchen. How did we ever make it today? We think, well, it could break down. Our car could break. What would we do? Well, we have 2 cell phones, for Pete's sakes, besides the GPS, and it's daylight and it's not dark. And well, what if my child never is potty trained? Now, if you haven't had children, you're not thinking too much about that. But if you had children, you think about that. Well, what if I don't graduate from school? Boy, that was a big fear for me. I don't know about you. When we entered university,